Hey, Mistakes listeners, this is Dave, and back at you with another episode. This week we actually looked at Project MC Squared, and the interesting thing is that Todd and I are quite divided about this episode, so you're in for a good one for sure. This episode was filmed, This episode actually was recorded on August 17th, 2015. And this is actually episode 17. And sit back and enjoy the show. And also, you can follow us on Twitter at Parent Mistakes, and also on Facebook at Parenting Mistakes. Again, sit back and enjoy the show.
So I wish I could say that like all of our parenting decisions were really easy.
How so?
So this is actually related to our podcast, which is evaluating media and trying to make decisions on whether or not we should allow our kids to watch stuff.
Right.
So as we've discussed numerous times, by the way, if you're new, my name's Todd and this is Dave. I have older children than Dave does. My kids are 17, 14, and 11. This puts us into a kind of interesting and sometimes challenging predicament as a family, because the older kids have definitively moved away from the kid material. So watching, like, say, a family movie can be hard because the older kids don't want to watch a Disney animated film.
Okay. Once again, a first world problem, for sure.
Yes, a first world problem. But something that we still have to solve,
That's
because
right.
you got to say, all right, let's watch a family movie, or the kids say, I want to watch a movie, and we say, because one of our things is that we prefer, we've allowed it to happen on occasion, but we prefer not to have everyone on a separate screen in different parts of the house. I know some parents do that, and we're not going to tell other people how to parent, but for us, we really would rather not do that. Again, watching anything is passive.
Just out of curiosity, just for me, why is that the case? Why did you make that choice?
Part of it, I think, is just, even though it is a passive activity, it's still a shared activity.
Okay.
And it's still also, there is value, and you know this, just as, husband and wife, or as a parent, there is value sometimes for a family just being in the same space together. I mean, you know this. There's times where me and my wife are just kind of sitting together in the living room together. We're working on our own stuff, or we're reading a book or something like that, and we're not dialoguing, and we're not getting to know each other better and that sort of thing. But it's just nice to be together.
Yep.
So we sort of follow the same, idea with family and with kids. So anyway, we have, as a general rule, not allowed our 11-year-old to watch PG-13 content. There have been a couple of exceptions, namely the Harry Potter films, which I know some parents would sort of go about, because there is violence, there is adult themes, that sort of thing. My daughter is pretty mature for her age. She has read all the books multiple times, and so we made a judgment call and allowed her to watch the movies. We have not allowed her to watch other PG-13 movies, such as The Avengers, which, we'll get there soon enough. So the other night, we came up with the idea of watching a movie, and someone suggested Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one.
Sure. Which
is a Disney vehicle and has your share of violence and adult content, but I don't know. My wife and I we made a decision to let her watch this. It is PG-13. And we got into a discussion afterwards, and we sort of, we didn't necessarily establish a criteria per se. Or we said, all right, we're not going to let her watch PG-13s except for these PG-13s, because if you set your barometer at violence, then Harry Potter doesn't qualify.
Right.
Nor does Pirates of the Caribbean. So I guess to say, it sounds like we're a little bit inconsistent, which we realize we're being. And that's not to say to parents, well, it all depends on the film and it all depends on your kid, because then it sort of feels like there aren't any standards to be had. because we have talked about it, and we don't really know whether there's sort of a subtle sort of I don't know, if we give Disney films the benefit of the doubt, because it's Pirates of the Caribbean, because there's a ride, because that sort of thing. So, as usual, Dave, I've given you a scenario with no real conclusive.
Well, I'm thinking about it. I am thinking about it. I like what you're saying because it actually kind of plugs what we're trying to do. It's tough because I'm like, one of the things that you and I are always very careful about doing in this show is that I'm not really going to be judging you on your parenting style. I do want to pull from it and learn from it and say this is something I want to do or not do. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell you this is what you should or should not do, which is kind of the essence of this show as well. It's like, again, two dads sitting down watching rated G content to kind of give you an impression about what this is about. But at the end of the show, I'm not going to give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You've got to make that call. And I think it's a growing theme that continues to happen for us, which is, hey, by the way, if you have a chance, watch this show with your kid, right? Or it might actually be just, it might end up being our strongest recommendation. At the end of the day, if you're unsure about it, watch it, right? If we're giving you some red flags, sit down and watch it with your kid, or just watch it on your own. Take the time out to do that.
Right.
And that's what you're saying, is that there's certain standards. Now, I could look at that and say, well, I'm a big Avengers fan, and I can tell you that the last Harry Potter movie was way more violent than the first Avengers film. It just is.
Yes, it's quite possible.
But at the same time, I'm like, I understand your judgment call. I get it. I know where Meg sits. At the same time, you're dealing with all sorts of parenting issues that occur in that scenario. Because like, oh yeah, Meg, you could watch the first 7 films, but I'm sorry you can't watch the 8 until you're 16.
Correct.
That's so unfair.
It
right? But then you say to her, but you can't watch the Avengers. But it changes, right? And I also say too that your kids come up with great convincing arguments. And one of the values I hold as a parent is nothing is ever off the table. You convince me that this is the right move for you, then I think we can do it. Right? Like if Meg could sit down and say I want to watch the Avengers for X, Y, and Z and gave me a printed report on it, ultimately I'm still the parent. I could say no. But if it's compelling enough, yeah, right? Which I'm assuming that's what happened with you and Harry Potter.
Yes, to a certain extent. But again, that is at this point, with her at this stage, minimum child input. Because I'm very comfortable telling my kids no. And the standard argument I get from my kids is, well, so-and-so got to watch it.
Right. And I would say, in rebuttal to that, I'd say, well, that's not a very compelling argument.
Correct. And it doesn't really matter how many times. They've used that argument so many times. And every single time I say, tell me when that has swayed me. Tell me when
exactly.
I have cared what other parents are doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I care what other parents are doing. It's at least interesting. But at the same time, I can't think of a time I've ever said to my kids, oh, really? I didn't realize your friend was allowed to watch that. Well, you can too. It just doesn't happen.
Right. Although, it's always a judgment call, right? And it's only going to get weirder. I'm imagining, it's hard to say where your eldest is on some of the stuff too, right? Like decisions that she's making and the decisions that you have to not make for her as she is, becoming an adult.
Right. Okay, so we don't have a good segue, but let's jump right into our show.
Oh, I think this is a perfect segue because this show that we watched, this Project MC²,
yes,
what a fun show, right?
Okay, well, let's get into this.
Okay.
So, like a previous episode that we talked about, well, we've actually talked about a couple episodes that are on Netflix. So this is a Netflix original series. And this is a little different for us because usually we've jumped into a show that's somewhat more established. This one just started.
It did. In fact, there is hardly any web information.
Yeah, there's
what do
nothing
we do?
out there. Right, there's nothing out there.
Right.
There's a grand total of 3 episodes on Netflix. Netflix is trying really hard to convince the viewing public that they are a one-stop shop for entertainment, which...
Sure. Why wouldn't they, right?
Hey, they seem to be doing all right with some of their shows. So,
yep.
This is Project MC2. It is a live-action show. It is I'm going to call it a teen show. It has a very sort of Disney Channel feel to it.
Yet it doesn't, to be fair.
Okay, well, we'll get into that. Simple plot, teenage spy, because apparently there are such things. Teenage spy.
Well, 21 Jump Street, right?
Yeah, well.
Teenage cops.
They weren't really, teenage cop, teenage spy. Okay.
It didn't matter. It's Johnny Depp, right?
That's right.
Didn't matter what he was doing.
So teenage spy, girl teenage spy.
Right.
Very, very, very important.
Michaela McAllister.
Yes. She teams up with the 3 smartest girls in her school.
Yep.
They're never really clear on age.
I want to say they look like a bunch of 8th graders to me.
Yeah, I'm going to say middle school.
7th, 8th.
So teenage spy who teams up with super smart girls, and then they are going to do missions together now as a team, and they're going to use science and gadgets and their
air quotes,
wit.
Air quotes, science.
Science. Rudimentary science.
Not even that. I'm not even sure. I kept on thinking to myself, is this real science? I'm not sure.
It's
the science. They use science books.
They do. They are in a science lab.
They are in a science lab.
They have access to a lot of glass beakers.
Right.
Okay, so you said what a fun show. So I take it you liked this.
So a number of things that just, again, entertainment-wise, always the entertainment bent for Dave. Obviously, there's a lot of money thrown into this show. Like, the production level is very high. I can't, again, when you say Disney-esque, yes, the acting is on par with the Disney-esque acting. But I'd say it's a little bit better. But the editing and some of the writing was pretty slick, right? For example, I really liked when the girls were like, ABW, right? Where they were like basically doing some texting
They're doing
code,
acronyms.
right?
Young people acronyms.
It was fantastic. I mean, I laughed every time they did that gag. I wish they had done that gag more. Okay, so for a tween comedy or a tween show that's, I think, kind of taking itself seriously. Again, very slick editing, a lot of things happening on the screen, but I could follow. I could totally track as to what was happening.
Yeah.
Obviously, new girl comes into school, and she is there to basically save the prince. So there's a prince from England, one of the princes from England, who's going...
Do they establish they're from England, or are they just a prince?
He has an English accent.
Well, that does... Okay.
And he is going
Could
to
be
fly
from
to the
Wales
moon.
or Scotland or something.
He's going to fly to the moon.
Right.
That was the other thing, is like, does this take place like 15 years in the future?
Is he flying to the moon, or is he just flying on a spacecraft?
Well, somebody's a part of the moon
I think he's just...
project.
It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. He is going to be getting on a spaceship.
He's going to fly into outer space.
He's going to go to outer space, yes.
Which is a common practice here at this junior high. Right? Like, this is... For these girls, this is no biggie. It felt like this is an alternate world, right? Like,
correct.
Where
Yes.
everything had actually gone right. The space shuttle didn't actually blow up, and people were actually going into space all the time, and technology is just crazy out of control. It felt like either it was 15 years in the future or alternate Earth that it was always good. We never had any bad things happen to us in America.
Well, we do have some private companies that are trying to go into space, but that's a different story for a different day.
Let's see here. A very diverse cast, right? There's no bones about it. which again I always applaud. I always like diversity. In fact, I don't dare I say, has there ever been a Spanish lead actor, right, that wasn't like some crazy, Mexican Spanish speaking zany girl? No, this girl was actually from Spain, which is kind of cool. I thought, okay, there's a culture that's totally untapped, quote unquote, for the American audience. That's lots of fun, right?
I always feel like it's like forced diversity. Like they took the characters and they're like, all right, we got to make them all look different, and yet still
all look the same.
All look the same.
Right.
It's sort of like, we're gonna get ourselves into trouble here. So this is like colleges, like small colleges that are traditionally Caucasian, create, flyers where you have a guy and a girl who are Caucasian, and then they have ethnic minority student, and they're all sitting together on the lawn with a textbook laughing.
Right. Sure.
Where you say, look, hey, look, we have a diverse campus.
Right.
And I sort of felt the same way with the show. It's like, oh, great, it's diverse. But at the same time, they're all very still generic junior high goofy girls.
Yeah, I'd have to say that there was... I'm guessing that over time that their personalities would become more diverse, but really, again, over-exaggerated personalities, right?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Okay, yeah. Again, we got to be careful here too. They're not all the same girl, but they did all feel like the same girl, right?
Yeah. They are interchangeable in a lot of ways, I feel like.
So I liked quote unquote the science bent, right? I feel like there's one thing I did like about the show is that it's unabashedly just embraces technology, right?
It does.
We can't, like, they're
totally unrealistic technology.
Totally unrealistic technology, but they are going for it, right? They're just, everything is Tweet-a-hootie or Facebook-a-hoodah, and all this stuff it's all happening for these girls, right? And they have elaborate social networks. They totally embrace that in this episode, and I kind of like that too. Like it's not hiding behind anything, right? Because one thing that occurs there is that even though these girls are outrageously technically savvy, they still end up with the same social problems. They can't figure out who this mystery girl is. Technology has failed them in some way. So they have to use their own means of, like physically tracking the person down as to where this person might live, right? Versus we just used the web and it happened, right? Anything that you would see on 24, right? Jack Bauer whips out his phone. He's like, oh, yeah, the bad guy's right here. Yes. This is how it happens to these girls, right? They're like, technology is failing us, even though we embrace it and love it. We're just actually had to chase this girl down. So those are a lot of the things that I like. That it was snappy, right? It's quick, and it's kind of funny. Again, not a whole lot of sarcasm. Always a plus.
Yes,
if this was a Disney show, my guess would be there's a lot of sarcasm in there. In fact, was there a laugh track in this at all? I don't think so.
No.
Because it's played up serious. It's a serious tween drama.
Yes.
So yes, I favor the show, obviously.
All right. I will say, and again, this is always the hard part. We talked about this before. Watching a show as a parent and trying to think about it in terms of who they're targeting. Because I watched this show and I just found it annoying. I just did. I mean, I have to say, yes, it's clean. It's fairly innocent. It's, it's got some cleverness to it. But I just found it was painful to watch for me.
Yeah.
Just because it's over the top, sort of annoying teenage stereotypes. So the acronyms, the constant references to social media, just, pretty people, fashionable outfits, the latest everything. And even the social media thing, sort of this idea. I mean, you talked about, they have to go to old-fashioned means and technology fails them. Sort of this message of, if you don't have a social media presence out there, you basically don't exist.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. No,
because that's the message they say. Well, they're like, well, we can't find this girl on the web.
Right.
She doesn't exist.
Exactly.
What kind of is that a message that you want teenage girls to hear? To sort of, and it's not like they state it, but that is sort of a subtle thing to sort of say, well, golly, if you're not active on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat, then you are definitively uncool. It's sort of like when you and I were in junior high and we did not have social media, but there were certain clothing brands if you wanted to fit in with the cool kids.
Oh, yeah, Code Blue. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, there was just, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I had one shirt I wore, one T-shirt that I think my mom accidentally bought that was trendy. And I can remember a couple girls complimenting me on that shirt, and I was thinking that I was the coolest person ever because those people had never given me the time of day.
Yeah.
I wanted to wear that shirt like every day.
Was it gotcha?
Oh, it might have been a gotcha shirt.
So I had two of those shirts. Boy, oh boy. Anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know what this looks like through the lens of a teenage girl. The interesting thing about this is that the whole premise of the plot is that it's a girl spy and girlfriends, and she works for a girl organization that is led by women, and there is a very strong sort of feminine message of, hey, women rule the world.
Right. You did catch that was Winnie, right? From the Wonder Years. You got that, right?
Oh, was that Winnie from the Wonder Years?
Yeah.
I thought she was familiar.
No, that's Winnie Cooper, right?
Are you sure?
100%, because I had to look it up myself.
Oh, you did.
Yep, I did. I looked it up. So,
which is fine, I mean, all-girl cast, all-girl perspective. That's
well,
cool.
That she went to one of the Ivy League schools too. Like,
yeah.
This is a big deal for her as well to promote this show because it's all about girl power, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
Smart girls, right? I think one of the articles that I read online was that the objective is smart girls are in.
Okay.
Right? Like these are the most popular girls in school because they embrace science. The thing is that I think the show would have lost a beat had it actually really got into science, right? If it broke down and became Bill Nye Science Guy time, where they're like, yeah, we actually had to use hydrogen sulfite to mix it with this particular sulfur, and then we actually got this reaction, I'm pretty sure the show would slow down at that point to a crawl.
They did have equations written on the chalkboard.
They had equations written in our lab, and I'm like looking at this, and I'm like, this is nothing. This is garbage, right? Like, maybe it's well beyond me, and that Albert Einstein.
Hey, science eye candy.
Right? But yeah, exactly, right? It's like the technobabble in Star Trek. Like, I don't know what they're talking about, and I don't think sure they know what they're talking about.
Okay, but again, to be fair, the smartest girls in the school also happen to be attractive, put-together girls who wear the latest fashions.
Oh yeah, and
have cool headphones around their necks and.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of them right now, and again, there is this dare I say it, sensualized ideal there. Again, short shorts, the trendiest clothes, blah blah blah.
So I think when I'm watching this, this is a little bit of a throwaway show for me. It's not bad. I don't feel like it sends a bad message. I don't know what the good message is. It's awfully convenient, and that's something that we have to be used to with kids shows. Like, the plot goes together just way too well, and that's us as adults sort of critiquing it.
Right.
You're this super secret spy, and these people sort of catch you being a super secret spy, and then you just go, oh, well, would you like to join my club too?
Yeah, so if I had to guess, if we sat down and watched episode 2 or 3, obviously there's going to be a villain that shows up, And usually a villain can either make or break a show. So if it's an intriguing villain that's actually challenging these girls, I'd say the show has actually a lot of potential. Because I actually like the cast. I like the idea of girl power. I actually wish they were using science, but I think that might be hard for the show to pull that off. And, there's just a lot of assumptions that are made. And I think I hear what you're saying is that the show is like a house of cards. You just blow it over if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And I'm saying is the reverse of that is true. I think that they find their footing. I think it actually could be a very intriguing show. And obviously, again, they put a lot of money into this thing. Netflix has backed it wholeheartedly. And, obviously it's going to be, they're just going to pump it out as quickly as they can. Who knows if it'll make it the first season? Again, I think it's going to be dependent upon what they challenge these girls with.
Yeah, and I don't expect this to turn into like the Discovery Channel.
Oh no, and I think that would be the mistake.
I don't expect them to do science.
To think that, so I think the message here is girl power, smart girl power, but it's certainly not Bill Nye the Science Guy. Far from it, and that would be the deception here. Like, oh, my girls are actually going to learn something from these girls, and I think what I hear from you is I learned nothing.
Yes.
And you're hearing it from me too. And what you hear from me is Entertainment Dave saying I was entertained. There were some funny lines in there, right?
Well, but essentially what you're doing is you're substituting science with technology. So you're sort of saying, well, they're science-oriented because they have gadgets.
Correct.
So they bought a bunch of stuff from Brookstone and the Sharper Image, and
well, they actually, and they actually do that the fingerprint thing throughout the episode too, where they're trying to pull fingerprints, and I'm like, what did they poured sugar on some sort of pen? Right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can't say that I looked up their particular methodology. Maybe it's kind of a MacGyver thing. Maybe they do actually use that sort of thing.
I don't know. Like I said,
The one other piece, and we've seen this before in shows, is that the one adult figure that we see, which is a parent, it's nice to see a parent occasionally.
Yeah.
But this parent is clueless, and
he's basically working for the equivalent of NASA. And he can't pull together what's happening at NASA. So you have a rocket scientist that can't figure out how to operate the security cameras at his own facility. And so one of the girls hacks his facility and immediately discovers what he needs to find, which is somebody going in and doing some espionage within NASA, you could say.
Correct.
I wish I could remember the name of it. It was like Moon Base or something, or Moon Project or something.
Space
like
Lab or something like that.
Something like that.
Yes, and hacks it within about 2 seconds.
I kid you not. That guy, he's a total sad sap too, right? He's hunched over. He can't figure it out, right? It's like, hey, Dad, how's it going? Oh, ladies, I'm having some problems at school, right? Or I'm having problems at NASA.
Yes, I am a
scientist.
scientist.
It's as if my 6-year-old came up to me and said, Dad, I know how to fix NASA.
Yes, I am a rocket scientist at a top secret lab. But let me sit down on the bed with my
then reveal
8th
everything.
grader and her friend and tell her exactly what is going on in the darkest chapters of espionage.
Now, what's funny is the girls they don't clue into that, like, because they're not parents, and they're like, "Oh man, we're awesome. We figured out
Yeah, we could
the
fix
problem."
that.
That's right.
We could solve the world. We could save everyone.
See, how could you not like the show?
I didn't. I'm sorry. It was, yeah.
Well, we'll see where it goes. It'll be fun to see how this show goes.
So, yeah, again, the content, the message, the morality, it's all pretty vanilla.
Yeah.
There's not really a lot there aside from, again, if you're comfortable with sort of the standard perfect looking characters, which we see a lot in television. We're not gonna see a lot of people that are ordinary, unattractive, disproportionate, that sort of thing. If you're okay with that, it's an innocent show in a lot of ways. There's not a ton of depth there. We've taken, as we talked about, diverse elements, but we still sort of flattened them all out and made them very generic in some ways.
I would love to come back to this show at season 3 if it makes it there, just to see what's happened. See if it's the exact same show that we initially watched.
I think it'll be bigger gadgets and more elaborate outfits.
More makeup, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any final parenting mistakes here?
Yeah. Oh, so I would say definitely a tween drama.
Yeah.
I do think it's trendy. I think it actually hits its target category. I would not recommend anybody watching this before tweens because it just probably wouldn't be very interesting to them. But for a tween, I think this is right up their alley. At this point, it's pretty benign.
It is. So you can follow us on Twitter, Parent Mistakes, and you can follow us on Facebook, Parenting Mistakes. We'd love to hear feedback, good and bad. If you don't like what we're doing, that's okay. We're parents. We can take critique because we can take critique.
We can.
We can.
We would like some critique, right?
We're parents. We get critique every day from our
every single day.
But if you want to give us encouragement, warm fuzzies too, that's fine. And if you want to give us suggestions on shows that we should watch, that would be helpful because we're always looking for new content. So that's about it, my friend.
Until next week.
See ya.